So, hey, everybody. Chris and I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we've had a great year in 2022, and this has been so much fun. We've done hundreds of episodes between HC Daily and the Bible Guys, and you guys have just overwhelmed us with your response. It's just so much more than we'd ever expected. So we've had a great run, and we are going to take a break in the week between Christmas and New Year's. So we're not going to go into the studio during that week. And so we're going to take a break. We're going to enjoy time with our friends and family, and we want to encourage you to do the same. But we're going to pick right back up again on the first Monday of January. We'll be back at it.
Well, today, Jeff, I just want to say that you are a riot.
Wow.
And today we're talking about the riot in Ephesus.
Okay. So he's Chris, and I'm Jeff, and we're the Bible Guys.
Hey, so today we have been asked to do a draft. Mm-hmm. You know, we've drafted things before. Mm-hmm. And we're going to draft our favorite Christmas movies.
Okay. So is this top 5 each?
Yeah, let's go quick because it's 10's a lot.
Okay.
Let's go 5 rounds.
Okay.
You want to do rock, paper, scissors? See who goes first?
Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, shoot.
1, 2, shoot. I thought it was 1, 2, 3, shoot.
All right, let's do it again. Ready?
Okay. Is it 1, 2, shoot?
No, let's do 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, shoot. All right.
I got it.
He did scissors.
So
I did paper.
We both did paper the first time. Then he did paper and I did scissors.
Go ahead. You get first draft.
So my favorite Christmas movie is Elf.
Excellent.
I love it.
And that would have been my second choice, but you took it.
Yep. Okay.
So my first one is It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, see, that'd be my second. So that's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty good. We're alike.
Okay. Die Hard. Die Hard is my second. I love
Bruce Willis say it is not a Christmas movie.
Yeah, but the writer just came out this year and said it is a Christmas movie.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So the writer, I think, is right.
Okay. So my second choice would be...
Although we don't gather around gather around the Christmas tree and watch Die Hard, but it's a good one.
But it's a good one. Mm-hmm. My second choice would be the Jim Carrey version of The Grinch That Stole Christmas.
Oh, that's a good one. That's on my list, too.
Yeah, that's really good.
Okay, that's such a good one. Home Alone.
Oh, you like Home Alone?
I love Home Alone. Yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, my third one is going to be Family Man with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
There isn't a time where if I'm flipping channels, of course I don't have cable anymore, but when I used to flip channels and it was on, I'm just going to watch it. It's guaranteed.
Wow. That's a good one. I like Santa Claus.
Oh, the original one?
Yeah, no, with Tim Allen. Yeah,
Which one? Yeah. 1, 2, or 3?
One. Yeah,
yeah. The original one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
Do you see the new things that are out?
So I saw that it's out, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm totally caught up with it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so my 4th round draft pick would be, this is our 4th round draft pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mine would be, believe it or not, it's the brand new one, Spirited.
Oh, really?
With Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, very, very good.
If you like musicals, did you see it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I gave that thing like 9 out of 10.
It was really good. It was
I thought it was
very well done.
amazing.
Yeah. Kind of a play on an old Dickens story, but it was so good.
I like the brilliance of it.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Very clever.
Yep.
I'm going to say, I'm conflicted here just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Let's say...
This is your last choice.
This is my last choice?
It's round 5.
This is 5?
Yeah. Make it good.
Oh, ooh. A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay. And I'm going to go not so tender. I'm going to go with Christmas Vacation.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course. Yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I was really struggling because I also love the stop animation Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, yeah, the claymations.
Yeah.
Did we do 5 or 4?
I don't know, but that was a lot. So you get one honorable mention because I gave an honorable mention.
I did Wonderful Life, Jim Carrey, Family Man, Spirited, and Christmas Vacation.
That was 5. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so what's your honorable mention?
My honorable mention would probably have to be...
Jingle All the Way.
Well, I mean, like I had this list.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's Jingle All the Way. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It's the only one on the list that you didn't draft and I didn't draft.
I was going to draft that one. I like that one too. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So
put that cookie down.
Very sophisticated acting in that one. I don't know how he didn't get an Oscar. So today we finished up 1 Corinthians, And Paul ends his letter saying, so I'm going to do my best to come and visit you guys, right? Well, it doesn't happen, and here's why. It's right here. So we're going to jump back. Remember, we're reading through the book of Acts, and we ended in Acts chapter 19, verse 20.
Yeah, so just to be clear, this whole series has been a chronological journey through the book of Acts.
That's correct.
Which encapsulates Paul's entire life and in the places chronologically where he would stop and write the book of Romans.
Right.
He actually wrote the letter. It's not the book. It's now the book, but back then it was the letter to Romans.
Yeah.
The letter to Corinthians.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway.
So that's what's happened is he finished up his first letters to the church at Corinth. Now we're picking up in verse 21 in Acts chapter 19 because this is the next thing that happens sequentially.
Right.
And it says, afterward, Paul felt compelled by the Spirit to go over to Macedonia and Achaia before going to Jerusalem. And after that, he said, I must go on to Rome. He sent his two assistants, Timothy and Erastus, ahead to Macedonia while he stayed a while longer in the province of Asia. About that time, serious trouble developed in Ephesus concerning the way. It began with Demetrius, a silversmith who had a large business manufacturing silver shrines of the Greek goddess Artemis. He kept many craftsmen busy. He called them together along with others employed in similar trades and addressed them as follows. Gentlemen, you know that our wealth comes from this business. But as you have seen and heard, this man Paul has persuaded many people that handmade gods aren't really gods at all. And he's done this not only here in Ephesus, but throughout the entire province. Of course, I'm not just talking about the loss of public respect for our business. I'm also concerned that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will lose its influence, and that Artemis, this magnificent goddess worshipped throughout the province of Asia and all around the world, will be robbed of her great prestige. At this, their anger boiled, and they began shouting, Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! And soon the whole city was filled with confusion. Everyone rushed to the amphitheater, dragging along Gaius and Aristarchus, who were Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia. Paul went to go in, too, but the believers wouldn't let him. Some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, also sent a message to him begging him not to risk his life by entering the amphitheater. Inside, the people were all shouting, some one thing and some another. Everything was in confusion. In fact, most of them didn't even know why they were there. The Jews in the crowd pushed Alexander forward and told him to explain the situation. He motioned for silence and tried to speak. But when the crowd realized he was a Jew, they started shouting again and kept it up for about 2 hours. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! At last, the mayor was able to quiet them down enough to speak. Citizens of Ephesus, he said, everyone knows that Ephesus is the official guardian of the temple of the great Artemis, whose image fell down to us from heaven. Since this is an undeniable fact, you should stay calm and do not do anything rash. You've brought these men here, but they've stolen nothing from the temple and have not spoken against our goddess. If Demetrius and the craftsmen have a case against them, the courts are in session, and the officials can hear the case at once. Let them make formal charges. And if there are complaints about other matters, they can be settled in a legal assembly. I'm afraid we are in danger of being charged with rioting by the Roman government, since there is no cause for all of this commotion. And if Rome demands an explanation, we won't know what to say. Then he dismissed them, and they dispersed. When the uproar was over, Paul sent for the believers and encouraged them. Then he said goodbye and left for Macedonia. While there, he encouraged the believers in all the towns he passed through. So I had to look down to see where we were supposed to end. I knew it was right in that first verse or two.
Right.
So here you go, man.
There it is.
Paul winds up not being able to go on to Corinth, and there's this big riot happening in Ephesus.
Yeah. So the notes here in the Life Application Study Bible says Paul had spent over 2 years in Ephesus, and the Spirit was prompting him to move on to encourage the churches in Macedonia and Achaia. Before he left Ephesus, however, a riot broke out because Paul's ministry there was seen as a threat to the business of idol sales. Paul barely escaped with his life. He went on to Macedonia, where he had an urgent need to respond to the situation in the church in Corinth, which is where he then writes 2 Corinthians.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting.
So I love this. We've mentioned this a couple of other times, but it says about that time serious trouble developed in Ephesus concerning the way.
Yeah, the way.
right? And what a neat thing. They weren't really called Christians. There were a couple of communities around Antioch. They were called Christians, but everywhere else, the Christians did not refer to themselves as Christians. It was a derogatory term. They referred to themselves as followers of the way. You know, in John 14:6, Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So they're just following the way. I love that phrase.
Yeah, and I love how
Maybe we should go back to that.
Yeah,
we're just followers of the way.
It'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah, the way. And by the way, that John 14:6 is one of the strongest claims, you know, where Jesus just doesn't leave any confusion, any doubt.
Right.
I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man, meaning mankind, right, gets to the Father except through me.
Right.
So, you know, just leaving no room for doubt there.
Yeah. So all the people who were followers of Jesus said, "Hey, we're following that way."
Right.
And Jesus, by the way, said, "Narrow is the way that leads to heaven," right? It's broad is the way that leads to hell. So they're followers of the way. So these followers of the way, it starts getting stirred up, not because of their behavior, but because of Paul's, right? Paul had been preaching and all these things. And so this guy, Demetrius, he gets all upset because he's been making idols and selling them. And now so many people are turning away from the idols that Demetrius is starting to get ticked off. It's affecting his business. And he's like, and not only is it a business issue, I'm also afraid that our great goddess is going to be dishonored. It doesn't seem like that was his motive, but that's how he kind of justified it.
He's trying to run Paul off.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to do.
Right.
And so he's trying to, you know, leverage the crowd against them, which he apparently did a really good job.
Well, they filled it. So, by the way, Ephesus is where the first church building, as far as we know in history, was built. So that's kind of neat that they had their own building. But it was well after this time. There was no church building that we know of during Paul's time. But in Ephesus today, in Turkey, there's still a giant amphitheater there. You can go see it.
What century was that built in?
It would have been in the 300s. Sometime late 200s, early 300s was when the first church building that we know of was built. But so at that time, Christianity was just done out in the open, which is, I think, the way God always planned. Oftentimes was, it was in the Acts chapter 2, said it was in the temple courts daily and house to house.
Right.
That's where Christianity was lived. It was lived out in the public square, not just privately inside of their church buildings.
Which by the way,
because there were no church buildings.
I don't want to get off on a tangent, but people, the more mature that I have gotten over the years, the more I've realized that that church doesn't have to be just on the weekends. Let me say that differently. Right. There are some people who say you need to, because your church doesn't do X and Y and Z on the weekends, what are you doing? And I'd say, well, what do you mean? Like, for instance, let me give you an example. Like, when are you going to dive into a deep study on Leviticus? Well, just because we choose not to do that in the 52, weekends
Sundays
of the year, doesn't mean that it can't happen in homes or in small groups, because that's what Acts chapter 2 says.
Right.
They met daily in homes.
Yeah.
Right. They lived life together.
Right.
And so the church
back then, they didn't just reserve Christianity or their religious commitment to Christ on Sundays. It was 7 days a week.
That's right.
Right? Daily, Acts chapter 2.
Right.
House to house and in the temple.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say, I just think that the more mature that we get, you can't judge a church by saying like, well, this church doesn't do this or this church doesn't do that. Well, why? What do you mean they don't do that?
Yeah.
Well, they don't do it on the weekends. Well, what are you talking about? The church is way more than that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have like 20 other ministries besides just what happens on the weekends.
Yeah. Well, for instance, communion. Some people would say you have to have communion every week. Some people would say that, just as you do have communion, you're supposed to remember the Lord, stuff like that. Well, just on Monday this past week, we had a prayer meeting, right? We had about just right around 100 people came, and we shared communion during that time. But it was on a Monday. It wasn't on Sunday.
Right.
Right? So Christianity is all the time. It's 24/7. You don't go to church. You are the church. We are the church, right? And so that's one of the dangers of having a building, quite honestly. They weren't encumbered by a building, and so they just lived out their faith all the time because there was no building. One of the dangers of having a building is the idea that we think we go to the church, and you just don't. So we are always the church. And so this is stirring it up. This guy is upset because he's losing money, and then he's concerned that, Artemis, this goddess of fertility, is losing her importance and credibility. And they viewed that as one of the reasons why Ephesus had become such a powerhouse city, right? It was a prosperous city. It was fancy. And they had this great big amphitheater that you can still go to today, one of the larger amphitheaters. And this lasted for hours. And they're just chanting, Artemis is the greatest, right?
Well, after they tried to calm him down, it says that it went for 2 more hours after that, right? Because they said that they tried to shove who forward? Alexander. They pushed Alexander forward to explain. By the way, that's funny how he just get pushed by other people.
Yeah.
Hey, calm them down, right?
Yep.
He's pushed to the front of the crowd. By the way, you know what I can draw out of this is that it says Paul wanted to go in too, but the believers wouldn't let him in. And some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, also sent a message to him begging him not to risk his life by entering the amphitheater.
Oh, he was going in.
He was going in.
Oh, watch out. I'm going.
Right. So
which is so cool.
It's very cool because Paul didn't fear, but Paul also probably was very confident in his ability to influence because he'd been in Ephesus, like I already read, for 2 years. Which means he knew people. He knew people, and he was going to, use his words to, calm people down and probably say a lot of the same things that the mayor did, right? But here's what I love about this is that sometimes even leaders, the strongest of leaders, need godly counsel around them. So it very well could have been that would have been a mistake for Paul. Goes in the amphitheater, gets mobbed, he gets killed,
Maybe.
whatever. Who knows? But those around the leader had to step up and say, "Hey, I know you want to do this, and you're convinced that this is the right move, but we're convinced this is not the right move." And you know what? There's no evidence that says this, whether Paul went kicking and screaming. But what we do know is that Paul never entered the amphitheater. Which means that he conceded one way or the other. So it's just a great example that leaders, even the strongest of them, should concede to the collective wisdom, because it didn't say believer, it said believers.
Yes, that's right.
So there's collective wisdom here that we should listen to.
I think of how that 1 Corinthians closed out. He's naming all these people. He's giving honor and respect to them. He's talking about standing firm and being strong in that. And then here he is. He's willing to be firm and strong. He's going to just push in. He's not afraid, right? That's what he's saying.
Right.
He's encouraging his people, commanding his people, really, God's people, to be courageous people. And, he just talked about he's no reason to be afraid of death, right? Death is an upgrade. So between here and there, I'm just going to serve the Lord. I'm going to push in, do all these things. And so he's going to head in. But it's interesting to me, be strong. Why? Because the fight around us is big. There's a lot of evil happening. We want, in modern day Christianity, in American Christianity, we want things to be better and easier. That's our great goal. And so we would be horrified if there was a riot in our town because of Christianity, as followers of the way. We'd be horrified if we got, like Gaius and Aristarchus get hauled up on the stage. We'd be so embarrassed. We'd be ashamed. How many of us would quit our Christian witness and be afraid of living out our faith if we thought we were going to be persecuted like that? So when we go back to what we talked about yesterday, Paul saying, be strong and be courageous, it's because of stuff like this. And Jesus said, don't be surprised when they hate you. They hated me first. And so we don't run from this. Well, of course, we don't hope it happens. But here in this situation, Paul was running to it. And they had to slow him down, say, hey, wait a minute. We need you. Don't go get yourself killed. We already have Gaius and Aristarchus out there. They're fully capable. Let them go ahead and defend. And then finally the mayor comes out and resolves this, and God calms the whole thing down. But persecution happens, and we should expect it. So for many of us, we stop being bold and courageous when somebody laughs at us at work.
Right.
And these guys were just about ready to get strung up.
Right.
In front of a crazy, almost like, I'm thinking of like a giant soccer stadium of people chanting and almost out of control. That's what I'm thinking is happening here, is they go on for hours.
Well, I mean, we have evidence. Archaeologists have, dug up amphitheaters and arenas. And, I was in an amphitheater in Capernaum.
Yeah.
And it was actually, it wasn't Capernaum. It was, gee whiz. I can't think of it right now. But it was sort of like, it was believed to be the city where Jesus, when he said the younger son went off in riotous living in Luke chapter 15, it was believed that this was the city that people would have thought of. So it was just this huge city, right? Anyway. So, but the amphitheater sat thousands that they dug up, and it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
By the way,
have you been in the big amphitheater in Rome? Not the amphitheater, but the Colosseum.
I only drove by it.
It's like, I don't know, 50,000 people.
Yeah, from the outside.
They were huge. the Romans were incredible architects. So this isn't just a small little, meeting house like we think of the Puritans with, 25 benches in a room.
Right.
This is
Right.
tens of thousands of people could fit in these places. And it was a pretty crazy riot.
So it says about the goddess that they were chanting about. It says Artemis was the goddess of fertility. She was represented by a carved female figure with many things, and it says a large statue of Artemis.
Body parts.
Yeah, body parts. Yeah. I just didn't want to say it. Which was said to have come from heaven in Acts 1935, but it was in the temple, and it was one of the wonders of the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
The festival of Artemis involved, wild orgies and carousing, and obviously the religious and commercial life of Ephesus rejected this city's worship of the pagan deity. So just think about that. I mean, think about not only was it just this false god, but it's the god of fertility. So all the practices that Paul was interrupting were, were those things.
At the Vatican Museum in Rome, they have the goddess Artemis, the giant, the statue.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible. And so the people, it wasn't, I think because American society, we have a very secular society, we separate our faith from our culture. But for these cultures, it was all embedded, it was all the same.
Right.
So the city found its identity in its goddess, and in the goddess worship, and in the idols that were being sold, and the cultural center of the city was the temple. And so this guy, Demetrius, had a great opportunity. He totally knew how to leverage it because the sanctimonious, hey, our goddess is being disrespected, along with, by the way, I'm losing business, those two kind of things. And it made total sense to everybody. It didn't seem like there was, you and me, it seems like it's kind of, false intent maybe or whatever. But for everybody there, the two things were so intertwined. It totally made sense. Our wealth, we are wealthy because of our goddess, right? All that kind of stuff. So it really made him mad. And this really highlights, as we wrap up today, it really highlights that in Paul's day, just like in our day, we have to remember in our day, this whole thing is the followers of the way are engaged in a battle, a war between light and dark. We're caught up in this fight between light and darkness. And sometimes the darkness gets a foothold and they get in and there's some big threats and there's some real danger. And this is why Paul ended his book in 1 Corinthians, be strong and courageous, because you're going to need it. And so even for us then, what are we doing where we have to take a risk, where we have to take a chance? The worst thing that's going to happen to us is somebody's going to make fun of us or laugh. And so let's step out and let's be courageous, like, Gaius and Aristarchus and Paul heading towards the place and all that kind of stuff. We need those kinds of Christians. We need those strong men and women of God saying, hey, I'm willing to risk it all for his kingdom.
That's awesome. Well, that is a great place to end. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow on the Bible Guys.